presentation, please feel free, excuse me, please feel free to add them to the chat room, which John will see after the presentation. You may also post comments and questions about photos within John's presentation album on our website, and that includes any technical questions you may have. We ask that you put your technical questions there. That album with all the photos will be set up on the Meetup website soon after the presentation. So again, use the raise hand function within the participants window if you want to verbally comment or ask questions. Now, one last thing before we begin, we ask that you please turn off your video so that we may conserve bandwidth. And we thank you for that bit of technical assistance. Okay, we're now ready to get started with your presentations. John, I now turn it over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to interacting with you here and in the future. I joined this group, I guess, 3 months ago after having a nice discussion with Jack, and so it's been very enlightening and helpful to me in photography. So I'm going to go ahead and start my PowerPoint, and I'm going to share the screen. PowerPoint, share. And so I'll be giving a brief overview with the background, and I'm going to talk for a minute about my group in Ocala, the Ocala Photography Group, which I started in early 2022. Let's see, what are we seeing here? Okay, we should be able to see the splash screen. Is that
right ahead, John? It's fine.
There, looking good?
Yes.
Okay, great. And if you haven't noticed, we are recording this for a few of the members of my group who couldn't be here, requested that we record, and perhaps some of your group as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so I'll talk about my photography group. And I mentioned that I started in early 2022 with the goal to help members evolve and refine their photographic vision. I was surprised in Ocala that there was no fine arts photography group. There was a camera club, which was very technically oriented, but they have, a year ago, they dissolved. What we do is we have photo reviews, museum and gallery visits, and photo walks. And we have guest speakers as well. We're not tech or tool centric, and we don't host competitions. What I do in every meeting is I compare and contrast snapshots to what I call refined vision images, so they can see what some of them are just real beginners, and they can see ways that they can ameliorate their vision. Then I'm going to go to some images for one of my 2 ongoing series, which is the Human Pulse, and then Walls and Spaces. And then we'll do Q&A. And as mentioned before, feel free to interject if you have any pressing question or something that you think might be insightful to share. So I've had a life in photography starting when I was age 14. I discovered photography in a graphics class in middle school, and I had my first professional assignment while I was still in high school, when I was just began high school for a Coral Gables newspaper. And then in '75, I entered the fine arts photography program at Ohio University. And it was intensive study of art history, history of photography, darkroom processes, and zone system. So I've worked in the darkroom in just about every process that was available at the time, everything from litho to E6 and C41, and of course, black and white. My seminal influences from that time will include Henri Cartier-Bresson, Diane Arbus, Ouija, and Robert Frank, and you might see some of them in my initial series that you're going to see, The Human Pulse. My first series was called Victims, and you can see that on my website. I'll put a link to the website at the end of the presentation. My first magazine photojournalism assignment was in Latin America for a Latin American version of National Geographic, and based in Miami. And I did 2 assignments for them in Latin America. And then at 83, I began a 3-month Mediterranean sojourn. And this is important because this is when I really started working on my first fine art series, The Human Pulse. I entered the corporate world, did a lot of corporate photography, and then I had a media design career. And on the side, I was a US Army Reserves photographer from 86 to 93. And then the Human Pulse series was further influenced by the film Wings of Desire. And some of you may be familiar with this very amazing movie. I recommend that you check it out however you can on Hulu or YouTube. And you'll see some evidence of that in the Human Pulse series. It's an existential film about angels who visit Earth. And from 94, I had an advertising and media production career. I had my own advertising agency. And then in 2007 was the first time I had the Human Pulse series at the Callenwald Fine Arts Center in Atlanta. In 2010, I entered the diplomatic service with the U.S. Foreign Service in the State Department. And that was interesting, doing things that I had never done before, but on the side, I continued doing my photography. In 2013, I had my first major retrospective in Rio de Janeiro, which was the 2 series that I'm going to show you some highlights of tonight. And then in 2022, I retired. But as many of you can agree, retirement doesn't mean you stop working. In fact, I think that I'm just as busy now as I used to be. So you can see thehumanpulse.com is the website, and you'll see 6 series. 3 of them are fine arts, 4 of them are fine arts, and then 2 of them are more photojournalistic. And I'll put up these links earlier. So you see the logo on the top left, the Ocala Photography Group. At every meeting, we have a little intro where we talk about evolving your photography from snapshots to a refined vision. And I show some examples, and then I talk about what it takes to evolve your vision. And I created this little image. So your snapshots, for example, there, a picture at an airport, and then technical competency is the evolution. And then you get to a refined vision. This is one of our members, Kay Johnson's photographs. And she did an encaustic work on the right based upon some images she took, which I think turned out very nicely. And then also the investment of time, study, and practice. If you want to achieve technical competency, you have more investment and you have to study, and also you have to learn about art history and photo history. So these are images that I've cribbed from the slideshow that I showed to my group. The attributes of a refined vision to me are pre-visualization, or the art of seeing. You may have a portfolio or a series. I recommend that you study art history and photo history. It will really help you create more depth in your series and in your photographs. In the same way, if you were going to be a writer, you would want to read the great works. And then there are final venue considerations, such as your audience, whether it's print or digital website, and the print and image size, and all of the other considerations. So all of this is important in the evolution. And I'm just going to show 3 examples here, comparing snapshots to refined vision that I've cribbed from the show. There's a picture of my older daughter many years ago, a snapshot of her and a horse. And then look at what a friend of mine did, Yuzi Mete from Indonesia did. You've got a horse there, but look at the incredible atmosphere and depth. This to me is a beautiful, very evolved image. You've got good tones, good command of the zone system, and the right moment to take the picture. It's just an incredible image. It's just one of the few images of other photographers that I have hanging up in my house. Here's another snapshot. You got bovines there in the background. And then look at what Sebastião Salgado did with bovines in one of his photographs in Sudan from the Genesis series. And then finally, you've got a potter studio with various things. And then this is a picture that I took in a potter studio in Brazil, where I was really attracted to the play of light on the textures and the very fascinating details of the fallen and collapsing pottery there. The print of this is just exquisite. It's one of my favorite images that I've taken. So we're going to look at some images from the Human Pulse, which I started in 1983 when I was on my Mediterranean sojourn to 7 countries. And I was basically hitchhiking all around, sleeping in parks and beaches. And I crossed the Sahara Desert hitchhiking, and I had incredible experiences. The Human Pulse series was heavily influenced by a book that I perused as a child, The Family of Man. And I'm sure many of you in this group are familiar with that. It's a book that came out to honor an exhibition in the mid-50s. And my father was an amateur photographer, and he had that book, and I used to thumb through it. And there were some images that I still, when I look at the book, I still remember as a child the impression that it made on me. The Human Pulse series covers the universality of humanity and shows the richness of the human experience. And it has dynamic or interrelated movements of people within the depth of physical space. I aspire to share more about the cultural or social conditions encountered. And here's where we get into the intersection of fine arts and social documentary. Spontaneity or joy of the captured moment may be a sense of reflection. So it's not just all action, there are some repose. Just as Henri Cartier-Bresson, he has a photograph of some people having a picnic on the bank of a river. The angle of the scene is important to me, and I look for viewpoints. And this harkens back to the movie that I mentioned, the Wings of Desire, and pre-visualization. This is very, very important to me. So I like to think of it as I'm a photographer, not just in 3 dimensions, but in 4 dimensions, which is of time. And so before I set out to a country, I do a lot of research. Before I go to the location that I'm pre-visualizing, I do a lot of research. I talk to people. And then when I get there, I do a lot of waiting. And if it doesn't work out, I come back another day. Positioning of the humans. And there's a lot of serendipity. And the prints on the exhibitions are selenium tone. About half of them are darkroom prints, and the other half are digital prints that are done under my direction. And because there's a lot of detail in this example, as you see on the top right, the exhibitions are larger, so people can really see the detail. So I start out this series with people in the distance, and I was attracted to this scene. I was on a bridge in Latvia, and it was freezing cold, but I waited there for at least an hour until the right combination of people that appeal to me. And it reminds me of the flight of birds in a V formation. But you've also, in the print, you can see details. The little boy is running away from his father. And so there's a lot of dimension to this. Here's an image right here in Florida. I was driving by, I saw people having a wedding, and I thought, that's beautiful, but why are they doing it at a construction site? So I stood behind the pipes because I thought that it was cool. The word keep is there, so it's promises to keep in the vows. And then you've got a slice of life on the right side, people going about their joy of living. Again, I'm on an overhang or a bridge looking down, and it's one of the few times I didn't have my own camera. Fortunately, I was with a professional photographer, and I asked her if I could borrow her Canon camera, and I took this image. And it's just a delightful scene of youthful exuberance. And then you've got good tonal range, you've got a nice diagonal, and some other attractive features. When I was in Haiti doing humanitarian work, after a couple of weeks, I decided it was time that I could do some photography, some personal photography. And so these are some victims of the 2010 earthquake. A few days later, they're swimming in a river that was polluted, but they're having a good time, and it shows the paradox, the incongruity of youthful joy in the midst of very tragic circumstances. I waited until I saw some action here, and you've got the two children either kissing each other or they're telling a secret. I call it the secret. And I liked all of the activity in the background. This is an island off of Tunisia. And you can spend a good couple minutes looking at all the activity going on, going into the distance. Shot from my cheap hotel room. And this was in 1983 when I was on my Mediterranean sojourn. It's a timeless image, and I waited until the girl was running by in the center of the image to get some action. But this image could have been taken in the 1940s, really. The 1950s, you've got a lot of old vehicles. Of course, I go to very remote towns. I go off the beaten track. I don't go to touristic places. A very mysterious image when I was in Paris with some friends. I had my 645 Mamiya 645 with me, and these young men and women just started walking by, and I'm not sure if they were blind or not, but they were holding on to each other's shoulders and they were singing a chant. Could have been a fraternity, but I think it's really a unique image of Paris. Ansel Adams says, sometimes I do get to places just when God's ready to have somebody click the shutter. And so that image and many of the other images remind me of what Ansel Adams said. I feel that A, I am there at the right moment, and B, there are many images in the future that I want to take, and I just feel them in my blood. I feel that I've got to get out there and take more images. They're just waiting for me. This is in Egypt.
Let me stop you for a second, John.
Yes,
Does
sir.
anybody I know you must be very involved with the work, but if anyone has any questions about how John thinks, how he goes about his efforts or whatever have you, you're welcome to ask some questions. I'm sure John will be happy to entertain them. So if you have something to ask, go right ahead, and we don't have to necessarily wait until the hard break, or we'll just continue. So if you have something you'd like to discuss, please raise your hand right now. Well, I guess your work speaks volumes, John, so we have nothing to ask. And with that, then we'll continue.
Yeah, we'll take a break, a hard break at the end of this series. We've got a few more images to go. But here again, I seek the higher vantage point, so you get that dramatic sweep of the panorama. And I like this also because you've got some atmospheric conditions going on from the blowing sand. And I clambered up some logs and a wall in order to get up there. Fortunately, nobody hassled me, and I waited probably half an hour until the right combination of people and animals and activity. And also, I love the way the young lady in the center, she's got an expression of bliss or joy, or it could be fear that they're going down. Mysterious emotions appeal to me. This is practicing or rehearsal of a dance in the desert. And this was before, what am I trying to say? Burning Man. I went to Burning Man in 2003. And of course, I had my Nikon FM2 with me. And I love the way that there's action and you've got emotion. And going into the distance, you've got a lot of atmosphere. There's very blowing sand there. The print in the foreground has good tones. In the back, it's very muted and not contrasty. A lot of details. I just took this in 2021 in December, and I waited here at the beach. I chose a couple of vantage points and I waited. And I'll show you an image of me photographing later. I try and be a fly on the wall. Here I'm a fly on the beach. And I wait until people forget about me. And I just wait. And so I was waiting for kids to be running. And then in the background, you got somebody standing on their shoulders, about to jump into the water. And so it's a very pleasant, bucolic scene, but it's also very culturally connected to the Cuban people who enjoy their leisure time. Similar situation in Central Georgia. I heard about something called the Redneck Olympics, and I thought that'll be cool to photograph. And I went there, I took a lot of pictures. You'll see another one coming up. And so I like the emotions and I like the activity going on in the background, a lot of little combinations of people and groups. Similar kid launching off, about to do a flip in the water. And in my books, I try and pair images when they have similar action going on or similar scenery. Here, if you go to my website, I have a little video about this photograph. Again, I waited a long time until I was happy with the scenery. And I was hoping for the horse that was on the left side out of the frame to do something. And finally it wanted to come behind me, but it was nervous. So it went in front of me. And I like the combination of tones and activity. Here I was on a boat and I saw these people having a drink, some liquor drink, having a picnic. And I waited until the man was running by. And I took this last month in Panama. I was in a park and I saw some teenagers practicing a Native American dance, and they were having a great time. I made a little video recording of it too, just for reference. But in the I don't think you can see it here and digitally, but there's a lot of faces and emotions in the background. A similar, this could be a pair. This is before I selenium toned it. I just realized this is the pre, but this is an actual 645 black and white on Tri-X. And I brought a ladder. A lot of times I bring a ladder, a small folding ladder, and I just stand up there and I wait for the right combination of things, very curious. What the heck are they doing? Why are they both laughing? Everybody seems to be having a great time on their mobile phones. Some joyful activity of the children. It's very appealing to me to see how people relax. I call this source because you've got the kid drinking water from the faucet there, and then you've got a man in the foreground looking at the source of information, his guidebook. And I waited for the little girl to be running by to get a little action. Sorry, I forgot to crop out the fuzzy edges of this.
John, Renee has her hand up.
Okay, I couldn't see that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so especially like the dance scenes that you were doing, do you tend to keep the camera down at your side? Are you always focused on it? Are you good enough that you can just hold it in front of you without having it up to your eye? A lot of times my arms get tired, and I've been told, hey, the more you do it and stuff like that, your muscle memory will come. But especially when you're talking about a half an hour or an hour, or, like waiting for the horse, because I do the wildlife type things. How do you, yes, people will forget about you, not as easy as animals will, but definitely people will. But how do you, like I was saying, do you stand there with the camera up to your eye? Are you more so watching with both eyes and then just kind of, do you sense something coming and then you prepare to take the picture?
Yeah, I will do a preview of the viewfinder, or now I have a Sony camera where you've got the folding back, which you can hold, you can turn it down so that you can hold the camera above you and still see what's going on. A lot of times if I'm waiting, I'll just prop up the camera on my, I'll prop the camera up with my elbows on the bridge or something like that. Or if I'm on a folding ladder, I do have to hold it. You have to be in fairly good shape. As we all know, you have to be in good shape to be patient. But it's a variety of things. I don't have any one solution. It's a variety of things. A lot of times I will imagine what the viewfinder is seeing, and I might take 2 or 3 exposures, just slightly moving it if I can't really look through the viewfinder. In my 645 camera, for example, I will hold it above my head a lot of times. And I'm pretty familiar with the scale of everything and what the lenses are doing. So I'm usually pretty close. I try not to crop my photographs, by the way. Almost every photograph you see is uncropped. So here we've got some action. Oh, did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay. Some action going on. And a lot of times I'll photograph people in developing countries making their living in a very difficult way. And this is very important to me. And this is the social documentary aspect. And I intermingle photographs that are very pleasurable and joyful with photographs that show challenges in life. I think it's very important to be honest.
John, here's, Ken had a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned that you don't crop. I'm wondering what's your thought process of why you decided from a fine art type of perspective?
Yeah, I see for this series and the other series you'll see, I see everything in a panorama or horizontal aspect ratio. And I think it's important to pre-visualize and to know what's in your frame. Occasionally, like maybe this image here, the top right, if it were much more blindingly brilliant, I would use some darkroom controls or cropping and or dodging and burning, or I might crop it out. Now, the next series you see the walls and spaces, I do a little cropping of that because a lot of times the walls have sunlight over them. But, you know, to me, I'm not a purist per se, but it's a source of pride to me that what I see is what I get. And it shows, to me, it shows that I am in control a little bit.
Thanks.
John, Cindy also has a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm curious, in as you're setting up to take these photos with these individuals, do you first seek their permission in some way, or do you just, are you so polite that and quiet that they don't notice you?
I go under the assumption that if somebody really has a problem with me, they're going to come up and complain. I would say only 5% of the situations have had that happen. I try and smile and I show respect and interact with them on a conversational level as much as possible so that there's a trust, a rapport built. In this scene here, I was in a blast furnace area. It was probably 110 degrees, and these poor souls were laboring under this heat. The women were bearing the brunt of the labor, breaking up this coal. The men, a lot of them are just slacking off. But I climbed on a pile of coal and I didn't see any problem. Nobody complained. And again, I try and be as innocuous as possible. I don't carry a lot of paraphernalia. My cameras are very innocuous. I cover up the word Nikon or whatever as much as possible, so I don't stand out as somebody who's really lording over them. So I just try and show the scene, and I occasionally, after I take a picture, I will go up to the person, especially if it's a mother with children or something, or children alone, and I'll say, I'm taking this for personal, I'm an artist, it's not going to be going onto any social media, and I'll put their mind at ease. So this image here is a 35 millimeter. Let me go back. This is a 35 millimeter with my old FM2. And when I scanned the image, I was really pleased. It held up very well. And the only challenge in the darkroom was that very bright background of the light coming through. I had to do a lot of dodging and burning. Here again, I waited a long time until something happened, and then it was a couple kissing goodbye. This is in New York City. Again, I'm a little bit higher up than everybody. I was able to find a ledge or a stair, and I waited until there was some interesting emotions. And a lot of times I'm documenting people who are not used to having photographs taken. A lot of people take touristic pictures, but I'm interested in the real people and getting to know the daily life. And here they are doing some event, a festival. And in the background, you've got the men who are waiting to start playing. This is one of the few images where I used a flash in order to freeze the action of this breakdancer who is doing a flip off of this box. And it's not really that high up, but it has that sense of depth. And it also, I like it because it's enigmatic. People don't know what's going on. Another breakdancing scene. This is from the mid-'80s. A lot of these images, as you know, when you take a photograph today, in 20 years, it brings additional curiosity for your viewer because the fashions change and the culture changes. Again, the combination of very serious devotion, a man who is prostrate on the ground, praying to Nandi, the god, the elephant god of good fortune, and the children just totally oblivious to that, having a good old time playing on the bars. Again, another challenging lighting scene. I deliberately let the girl who was being lifted up go off frame. And I like the way the father is giving his daughter a little thrill by lifting her up. The men on the left are watching and smoking the hookah. And this is one of the few images where I'm actually in the picture. You've got me with my 35 millimeter camera in the reflection of the mirror. Another slice of life. This is in Ukraine in 2007. The caricature artist. And I couldn't have posed this better if I were doing an advertising photograph. You've got everything working out, and you've even got the little boy who's looking very skeptically at the drawing and thinking, well, that doesn't look like my sister or something like that. This was really interesting. This is one of the few images that I shot using a small digital camera. It's a 2/3 camera, and I just carry it around with me most of the time. And these people were from Eastern Europe just after it was opened up, and they came to Miami, and they had never seen a squirrel before, apparently. They were just fascinated by it in the foreground, and they just watched it. So I like the way you've got different expressions in the children, things we take for granted. This is another image from Burning Man, prayer time, and also massages. And it's very dusty. That's why a lot of these images are flat, but also I keep a little flat zones intentionally to make it more timeless image, almost like a calotype. This is another social documentary showing hard labor of children as young as 5 years old doing hard labor, carrying heavy baskets of coal, while the men and the boys on the right are gold breaking. The women and the children are in this excruciating heat in India. And I couldn't have gotten these images really to get that sense of depth if I hadn't raised my camera up or stood on something. More hard labor of children. There's a girl who's about 11 years old doing work on a construction site. And all over the world, children are pressed into labor. Child labor is a serious problem. I was for 2 years in the State Department in the Bureau where we looked into child labor and exploitation. So this is another image where I used a flash to freeze the children in the foreground. Here again, I waited a long time. This was during a festival. Inside, there was all sorts of dancing and normal competitions and things like that, but I was more interested in what was going on as people were not really conscious of their actions. And I like this especially because you've got the woman reaching out, the girl reaching out. It completes the diagonal, and it really has a great, to me, it has a great composition. This is an enigmatic image, very minimalist. Slice of life. I lived in the Atlanta area for 25 years. And so I think it's important to document how people are in their daily life. And this could have been a photograph made by a number of photographers, Robert Frank, Gary Winogrand, showing the way young people interact. And I like the way the girl is leaning on the boy who's being silly.
John, Renee has another question.
Okay, I pair that with this image. Go ahead.
Back to two pictures. You said this one's more enigmatic. Could you, I'm not overly familiar, and I'm also looking at this on a cell phone, so I might be missing part of it, but is that a person on a balcony? I need a little bit of conceptual explanation.
Okay. See, questions to me are more interesting than answers, but basically this is a thermal springs and the two floating heads are bathers. And the man in the foreground is a lifeguard.
Oh.
So he's on a kind of a platform overlooking the thermal springs. In Iceland, they have all these really cool relaxation spots.
Right, and people walk down the landscape to get into the water, I believe, if I'm thinking of the right place.
John, Sarah had a question that she put in the chat, so now she's got her hand up.
Oh, I can read it to her, to him.
She has her hand up.
Got her hand up.
Okay.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, we can notice that all your travel shots are in black and white, and actually a nice grayscale, I would say, not much contrast. Any particular reason do you do this and not using color? And also, well, question is, do you shot in black and white or color and then transform it?
Yeah, my film is all black and white film. I'm one of these people that years ago, I stocked a lot of plus X and tri-X in 2 1/4, and I've kept it frozen all these years. But for my digital, I'm shooting in color, and then I convert it using Lightroom into black and white. But yeah, you're right. Well, it's hard to tell when you're looking at the screens, but there is a good tonal range. I studied the zone system, and it's very important to me. That's one area where I am really a little bit fussy. When I am finessing a photograph in Lightroom, a digital photograph, or printing it using multi-contrast paper or something, it's important for me to show as much detail in the lower zones in 1 and 2, and also not to blast away the higher zones in zone 8, 9. And to me, that's again, it's a source of pride if I can make an image, unless there's a sandstorm or something. I try and have my prints to have a good representation of the zones.
Mhm. Thank you.
Well, again, I'm perched over these kids. I went to a favela or a slum. I went to 7 slums when I was working as a diplomat in Brazil. And in all of them, I had no problems. I didn't have any people trying to rob me or mug me. In fact, I felt safer in Brazil than I did when I was growing up in New York City. But here I'm waiting for the action, and this is a little competition that the teenagers and the boys have about knocking the top out. And so I like the way they're focused on the action. And then again, I cut off. I didn't mind the top right being truncated, because you can imagine what's going on there. The important action is in the center. Again, the higher vantage point. This vantage point is not very high, but I like this image because it shows a number of reactions. We've got the little girl dancing. You've got the 2 kids on the stairs watching the singer and the musicians. And then most interesting to me is the very almost transfixed look of the bride watching. And so I was in a hotel in Tunisia, and I heard this music, and I ventured in and I asked them if I could watch, and everybody was cool. Here again, a very welcoming series of emotions, and dog in the foreground. And in the temples of India, there's a lot of interaction with animals, which I think is great. This is entitled The Comb, because the man is combing his boy's hair. And I love the expressions of the boy and the man to his right. And then between the 2 men is another man staring at me. Again, I attended this event. I heard about it and I said, that'll be a cool thing to photograph. I spent 3 or 4 hours photographing people getting muddy in the water, but none of them really looked interesting to me. But then I got my ladder and I got up close to this guy with the bone mask, and he was good enough to let me photograph him. I didn't pose him. I just waited for him to turn to me. I talked to him. A lot of action in the background. Here, you think this is India, but it's actually Atlanta during a festival, a Hindu festival. And I like the way the girl reaching out, she and her father are looking at this man looking down. There's an emotional connection. Now we get into the real pulsing going on. This is toward the end of the series. And this is the tomato throwing festival in Buñol, Spain. Again, I photographed the tomato throwing, but that was very, you can go to Google and see pictures like that. But to me, what was going on behind the scenes was fascinating. And I had, fortunately, I had brought a raincoat, so I was able to protect myself. And then I had wrapped my Mamiya 645 camera. The hard part about this was to change roles in the midst of all of this frenetic activity. But there's a lot of almost playful violence, I guess. You've got a man being elbowed in the foreground. And then you could spend a few minutes looking at all of the emotions of the people, of mainly men, going back into the distance. This is another redneck festival in Georgia. And I had to use my flash here because it was getting late. It was almost dusk. And I'm high up. I think I'm perched on some sort of a barrel or something. And so I really had to hold the camera still, but I was able to use a flash to capture some of the action, especially in the background. There's the movement or a little bit more. And this reminded me of all of the films that we see of Africa where the wildebeest are trying to cross the river and the crocodiles are there. Another enigmatic image in Ukraine after a youth festival. And on the print of this, which I have as a 24 by 36, the tones are really nice. Some of my images are possible to be, they're attractive to people who want something innocuous on their walls, but something like this is not. This is the, after the earthquake happened in 2010, and they were putting victims on helicopters to take them to other hospitals. Now, this is another example of a time where I didn't have my camera. I could kick myself. I got to this scene with a friend of mine in the middle of nowhere, a forest, and there was this frozen waterfall. I didn't have my camera, and I said, "What's going on here? This is incredible." So I ran back all the way to the car in the snow for 10 minutes and came back to this scene with my camera. And just as I took the picture, everything dissolved. There was nothing left of the people. They just disappeared. They scattered. So I only got one shot, but to me, this works out really well. Again, it's a film image. Okay, so we'll take any more questions on that series before we get into the next one.
Well, Debbie, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. John, great presentation. I've had the chuckle when you talk about your stepladder. A lot of people carry their tripods and you carry a stepladder with you. How do you keep it from being so obvious that, you know, you don't want to attract attention to it? So how do you keep that being so less obvious to folks?
Well, first of all, it's I think a 4 foot or 3 foot. No, it's a 3 foot aluminum ladder, so you can easily carry it on your back with some kind of handle. What am I trying to say? Something that would go around your neck or shoulder. It's pretty easy, and then of course I try and park close by. And yeah, you have to, as I said, you have to be in good shape to do a lot of human interaction photography. And when I was at the Mud Festival, I stayed there for about, many hours. And I booked a room, and I knew in advance what I wanted to get. And people thought it was humorous that I was standing on a stepladder. Some of them took the opportunity to throw mud at me. So I was a target quite frequently. You know, young people will do pranks, but yeah, you can do it. But a lot of times I don't have my stepladder, and I look for higher perches like walls and steps. And as the picture in Egypt, a series of logs that were stacked up.
Great, I love it. Very creative prop. Thank you.
We have a question from Melissa.
Hi, yes. Actually, you sort of already answered it, John. Sarah asked about your processing, your sort of more grayscale with less contrast. And I found as I was looking at all of your images, it kind of gives it a neutral feel to sort of allow the viewer to make their own interpretation. So I kind of had a 2-part question. Did you go back and edit, you know, some of the older stuff for the series? Because it all looks very similar. I mean, there are a few that had a little bit more of like a colorization to them. But I was just wondering if, you had to go back to older things and sort of make them more in line with the current things.
Well, yeah, so this series, The Human Pulse, started in 1983, and the way I photographed, I look for scenes that are, what am I trying to say? I look for scenes that will fit into my preconception, first of all, in the lighting, and I go out at certain times of the day, or if it's overcast. But also I have a Nikon Cool Scan scanner, and when I'm scanning, I'm flattening, I'm trying to get a good range of tones, but I'm not over processing. A lot of images that I see today, especially in competitions, they pop out at you. They're very contrasty, or they have somebody's done something with the clarity. I don't know, and that seems to be a trend. But I buck that trend. I like images that look like they could have been made in the 1940s or the 1930s. They're flatter, and to me, the whole series should be timeless. That's why I don't have dates on any of the photographs of that series. I like for people just to think of it as humanity at a certain on the humanity on the planet. Really, that's what it is.
And Judy?
Hi, John. I'm enjoying your presentation. I really am very, very excited about your picture called Heads from the Ukraine. It's kind of a surreal picture of people in a shed outdoors. So I was wondering if you stumbled across that or what the circumstances were. And I suppose if it's possible, you could have it up while you're telling about it. Pass. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not going to go all the way back on the PowerPoint, but we can come back at the end. A lot of times I'm at an event or a situation, and I will look in the distance. I will have a yearning. What else is there? What more can be done? What are people not seeing that I should highlight? I'm not interested in touristic pictures. I'm interested in things behind the scenery. And this really goes back to my philosophy of life, to reduce suffering. And in order to reduce suffering, you have to look into the dark corners of the planet and see where people are languishing or experiencing life that may not have been photographed much before.
Thank you.
That help?
All right, John, maybe we should continue now.
All right. So this next series is going to be a lot different. This is it started out in black and white, but it's mainly color. The characteristics or the aspects of this series, diversity, is that spelled right? Again, human conditions, but it shows it's reflected in the walls and spaces. And again, a lot of these images are cryptic and mysterious. Animals or people offer scale and cultural references. The background is often equally or more important as the subjects. And I'm seeking to uncover beauty embedded in the grittier seams of life. They provide a cultural and geographical reference. And to me, there are a lot of metaphors. So you'll see some images that are metaphorical. So this is another ongoing series. As I said, it started out in black and white. There's a very minimalist image shot with my shot on 35 millimeter actually. Another minimalist image. I saw this opening, this aperture in the wall, and the texture of the wall was fascinating to me. Interesting composition, diverging diagonals. Why would somebody store thousands of fluorescent bulbs? So I call it House of Light. This image I took just a couple of years ago. boy. But the thing that attracted me was the texture of the walls of this building that's disappearing, dissolving. And then most of the images are in color. And I thought this was very cute, the way the children had created their own gallery on a wall, on the side of a building or a wall. And as you notice in the bottom, I've got dates on here in addition to the title. Here I violated the cardinal rule of shooting into the sun, but I was able to put my hand over the lens. I didn't have a lens shade, and so I didn't get any flare. But here I waited for the cat to be just at the right place. And the thing that first attracted me was this structure of the trash can that had apparently been battled and battered. But the cat really adds, again, additional interest and scale. Another scene, a lot of times I'm going into the back alleys where people don't expect me to be photographing, but there it is. You've got a few avian creatures, and to me it's interesting. Behind the scenes, it's interesting. Walking with my camera through a slums, and I like the way the signs on the wall, and then I like the way the children were, and I waited for the boy to throw something. It was a stormy day. Here there's a story about the culture where they put paint on their hands and put them against the facades of shops in order to ward off evil. But you've got the boy with both of his hands exposed walking by. The interaction of the man on the left with the girl on the right. And to me, the part of this image that I thought was really interesting was the hole that was carved out of the wall is in the shape of the map of Africa. Here's another image where I didn't have my professional cameras. I just had my 2/3 digital camera, a Canon point and shoot, but it was at night and the lighting is coming from a halogen light. And I love the way the man's possessions were all laid out for sale. So I rested my elbows on a car and took the picture. This is probably only an 1/8 of a second. A lot of my images in this series deal with the way people interact with spiritual entities or the Great Spirit or their gods. Shrines. There are 3 or 4 images in this series that have the word shrine in it. Interesting arrangement of the PVC couplings. To me, they look like sausages. This is in a public area. Sad scene, but the blue wall was gorgeous to me. A very looming shape in Petra. And I didn't choose to show the photograph of the amazing architecture there, but the bench to me looked really almost like it was being overpowered by this looming cliff overhead. And then a similar, more enigmatic looming shape. This is actually one of the few panorama scenes that I have, and there are 2 cats. One of them is peeking out from the doors on the right. And a lot of the images in this series have writing on the walls, some of it legible and some not. The back side of a cemetery showing the shadows and the workers' wheelbarrows was interesting to me at sunset. Curious arrangement of everyday shapes in China. Fascinating textures and colors, or not colors, but lack of color. But then you've got the door with the heart in it. So somebody's emotions are there in the midst of all this gritty scenery. Here you've got a dichotomy of age and youth, and the diagonal wall separating the two. Obviously, they knew I was taking their picture, but no complaints. All females. Some of the images in this series deal with challenges that people have as their ability to move is restricted. But I was attracted to this wall, and then the woman in the magenta walking by. A similar image of a man in Cuba. I went up to him afterwards and I asked him if I could use his picture, and I got to know him. I wrote his name down in my journal. Enigmatic, cryptic writing on the wall. Women in her traditional garb. How are we doing for time?
I'm keep right on the money.
Okay, great.
I think we're okay, but there's a couple questions. Jan Midas has a question and Judy King. So how about Jan wrote her question out? Jan, do you want to ask your question? She stated in the chat, a famous photographer once told us to eliminate distractions. And in your images, there are many body parts, animal parts, pieces of this or that, which have nothing to do with the focus. Why did you not clean these up? Why is not cropping so important to you? Why does the girl being lifted out of the picture work for you?
Yeah, I don't like pat answers. I like images that make people do a little searching and questioning and posing their own answers. Maybe it's like a mystery at the end of the book. You're left with a lot of questions, and it stays with you longer. And again, I'm showing unusual scenes that people normally wouldn't photograph. Here's a man cooking sweet potatoes. That's what he sells. He sells sweet potatoes. He's got his bottles, his cans upside down. There's a cute dog. And so it's a combination of things. You've got a moment, place, and time. You've got a culture. You've got enigmatic activities. And so it's okay to me to cut off some people in some instances. If you can assume what's going on, you don't really need to have everything in the frame, in my opinion. It's just my personal opinion.
Judy King has a question.
Go ahead.
You said you talk with people, so do you speak multiple languages or do you travel with a translator, or how do you do that?
No matter where I go, before I go there, if I don't already know the language, I will study so I know 20 or 30 phrases. You know, for example, in the local language, wherever I'm going. In parts of Latin America, for example, it's a challenge because a lot of places don't speak Spanish. They speak an indigenous language. So when I went to Guatemala, for example, I learned how to say, may I take your picture so I can bring it back to my country? I learned it in the indigenous language of the Quechua Indians. I still remember it. Tinque si la retrat, retink salin tenamit. So I'm fluent in Portuguese and Spanish. I'm fairly able to get along in French, and I studied Arabic in college and in the Foreign Service. I know some phrases in Russian, and I studied German. So I'm not a polyglot, you know, I'm not an expert, but I'm able to get along. I think that's very important. In order to make your subject and the scenery feel it comfortable, and you're going to see an image that I took in a violent part of Panama where there was a gang member. And so it was important for me to put people at ease. and to build that trust before I lift my camera, to build that trust. So they know that I'm not just taking advantage of them. Yeah, so language is very important. In communications, photography to me is a mode of communications, but before you take the picture, you have to lay the groundwork.
Thank you.
And
Okay, ready to move on.
okay, beautiful graffiti embedded in the texture of this wall, which I loved. Waiting for my computer to catch up. Not sure why it stopped. I may have to go to my PowerPoint, see what's going on. All right. Let's see if I can go get out of the PowerPoint. Any more comments or questions while I'm trying to figure out this freeze?
Oh, you were, you were saying, excuse me, the question about no cropping came up. Actually, the first crop that any photographer makes is with his eye. And the next crop is in post. But, and the other thing was that without explanation, sometimes the viewer doesn't know exactly what we wouldn't know that those were sweet potatoes on that grill until you told us they were sweet potatoes. So people may feel that there's something missing when without the explanation.
Yeah, in the prints, there's a lot more detail and people can go up and decide that they're sweet potatoes. But yeah, I don't think a photograph has to have everything answered. I like leaving some things open-ended again. All right.
It's not a question of the sweet potato or a white potato. It's a question of is there emotion, feelings, interest,
Yeah,
cognitive reasoning? What are you going to walk away from? What will stick with you? Is it viable? Is it memorable? Is it important? Depending upon the subject. It's not a matter of what a potato is. It's a matter about what the intention is. If the intention comes through with the photograph, then it's all that needs to be accomplished.
yeah. And remember, this is a series. One image in it of itself is not necessarily going to allow the audience to understand the message I'm trying to create. And so I'm signing in on my other computer. And just hold on one second.
Recording in progress.
All right. Let's get this going here. We were up to, I'm going to share my screen. Share. Okay.
John, if it becomes a big problem, we could just reschedule the second half of the whole thing again.
Oh, it's okay. I've got it up on the other. I just have to put it on.
I think you have to unshare your first screen
Oh,
in order to share the second one.
okay. Yeah, stop share.
Yeah.
All right, so share we are, and I'm sharing my PowerPoint. Share. Okay,
Okay.
sorry about that. Fortunately, see, my years of doing multi-image shows where you have 9 or 12 projectors going on at the same time is really helpful because you learn to always have plan B.
Mm.
All right, so continuing on, similar graffiti on the wall, and I wait for somebody to walk by that I think is going to be appropriate to the graffiti. Now this is part of this is a two-part. You've got the kids talking to each other. Maybe one is saying, "Come on down and play." And then a few days later, I saw a similar scene where one cat is saying, "Come on down and play." So in my book, I've got these facing each other in the pages. Beautiful animal. Looks like it's torn down part of the wall. Here's a similar religious icon, confusing scale. Donkey in a hole, and people say, "Is it stuck?" No, there's a garage to the left. Similar scene with a kitty cat. These are pairs. Now, this is actually the very first image in the series in 1980 that I took, where I was fascinated by the texture and the feeling of the wall. And so you got the little piglets going on. This is really the image that started my attraction. Not sure what's going on in this. Oh, I see. Fascinating texture, and I could translate some of the words, but I asked a native speaker to translate it. And in my book, I've got the full sentence. It's talking about the end of the world. Here's the image again. Some people have said, "Oh, this reminds me of the killing fields in Cambodia." But the print of this is just gorgeous. I worked on this print a long time until I got all of the values to show up. Broken down lockers with numbers. Shrine with missing. Something's missing. Sometimes something that's not there is just as interesting as something that's there, in my opinion. Here's the gang member, and I said, "Are you cool?" In Spanish, I said, "Are you cool with me taking a picture?" He said, "Okay," but he's made the gang symbol, and I took 3 pictures of him, and every one he's covering his face. But I like the colors on this. You know, as those of you who have traveled internationally, the sense of colors is completely different from one culture to another. Rectangles within rectangles. And this I handheld, but I leaned against the wall to get a steady image. You can see the people walking by in the foreground. They're blurred, but the woman in the portal, she's not moving. So in a lot of these, it's almost like a still life to me. Instead of oranges and apples on a table, we've got debris and questionable items. Confusing because some people say, oh, there's a man leaning up there and those are his legs, those are his pants. I just took this a couple weeks ago. This one, my younger daughter saw this picture and she said that they both look like bulls. And she's right. They have similar expressions. So you've got the interplay between the person and the wall, which is ideal for me. The colors on this are what started me. I waited for the woman to be covered. Here's another shrine of broken dreams in Brazil. You wonder what happened. A very minimalist image, bald man on the bottom right. This is both minimalist and detailed. The word hope in Spanish. And I don't do any messing around with saturation or hue or anything like that, other than to make sure that it's faithful to what I saw. So in this case, it's a little bit dark. I'm not going to do anything to make it pop out because to me, some images deserve to be a little dark. This is another one of my initial images in the series. I was attracted to the hands on the wall, the handprints, I should say. And this is just a few weeks ago, a very minimalist image. Okay, so that's an overview of the two series.
Oh, Lynn, we could put everybody back up.
All right, well, I wanted to show
Oh, I'm sorry.
what I typically, how I walk around is my sweaty shirt, but this is after a few hours of photography. And I put this here because in my type of photography, you have to blend in as much as possible. My cameras go in that innocuous blue bag or in a shopping bag of a local market. I don't carry around a donkey bag when I'm going into most places. I carry my passport all the time under my pants, under the belt of my pants. I've got items in that white bag to give to children. In this bag, I probably had a jar of peanut butter or something like that for the parents. And then the hat on top, I'm in Cuba, so of course I'm going to have a communist star in my head. My modus operandi.
That's
And,
terrific.
in case anybody wants to know, this is some of the cameras I've used over the years. The bottom ones I still am using. I know this isn't supposed to be technical, but and the bottom right one is my favorite camera. It's a real monster to carry, but the images are just gorgeous. And I told you I would give the links. So these are links to various pages that I have on social media. And the most important one is thehumanpulse.com. Okay.
Well, John, if you'll unshare, then we'll get everyone back.
All right. I'll share.
Here we go.
Well, before we have our final comments, I personally want to extend a great big major thank you to John for sharing his vision, his thought processes, his humanitarian persona. He's a high-level gentleman. In fact, during our initial conversation, I told him that he was the only one, outside of the people that I personally know in the art of photography, outside of that could talk about photography on a high level. And I've spoken to many people in Florida in the last 23 years, and John was on the top. So we began our little conversation, and here we've had an opportunity to really get into John's head, to see what he's looking at, to understand what he's thinking about. It's more than just someone taking pictures. It's someone who truly has a worldview that thinks about, the downtrodden, the people who are struggling, but not just the beauty in the world. In my opinion, he's left me personally with a lot of thoughts about things I tend to dismiss. I might be thinking at some point of where I would like to go to dinner, and here are these in a nice restaurant, and these people are struggling to find water, to take a bath, to have a piece of bread. So this has really filled a circle, completed a circle for me to help me get out of myself, and really brought me back. I want to thank you, John, to a sense of greater purpose and reality.
Well, it's my pleasure.
So,
John, you're on two computers, so we're getting feedback.
Yeah,
You have to-
apologies.
okay, so that was from me. Does anybody have any last thoughts or questions for John?
Oh, it was a great presentation, and we thank you so much.
Yeah, on website, I have a blog, and I have little excerpts of experiences that I've had, and it might provide more insight to some of you as to how I overcame some challenges. And the journal entries go back to 1977. So it's only about 10 blog entries, but they're little points in my evolution as a photographer. And I think that's important to tell the story, the background story. And so feel free to put a comment on my blog, on any of the blog stories. And so I want to thank you, Jack and Lynn and Peter and Gary, for enabling this presentation. It's been a real pleasure. And feel free to contact me at those by email, or put comments on my social media. And I do have a show at the Appleton Museum next year, a one-man show. And this is one of the most important museums of Central Florida. So I'm really excited about that. I'll send out a message to all of you next year. And if you're up in the Ocala area, please let me know, and we can talk some more and share a coffee or something.
This was really a strong presentation of one man's vision. He's not trying to emulate someone else. He's demonstrated his own visualization, his own cognition, his own feelings about subject matter, and there's no conformity necessary. It isn't what someone else said, what someone else did, what you do, what anyone else does. The most important thing is, can you express yourself? And indeed, this was a job well done of nothing less than exceptional expression.
Thank you for being willing to share.
Oh, my pleasure.
So last comments, guys, this is it.
Well, my only comment is, Jack, maybe you can invite John to The Art of Photography sometime.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Or maybe you can invite
Oh,
John.
he already
visit us.
is. John is invited. John was here last week. He had a photo up on last weekend's critique.
Oh, you're right.
We're not gonna let John get away. Do you think that?
Yeah, and I've used your organization or your group as a channel for members of my group. So now that they're aware of it, I think you'll get more members and more interaction at your meetings.
Yeah,
Right.
if John tries to get away, I've got a big butterfly net.
John, I think that most of the pictures and the things that you expressed today are on your website. So I'm not going to minimize it by just posting them in an album. I think it's much more effective if people go to your website.
Cool. Very good, Lynn. And
Anybody else?
I have made comments on some of your photographs too in your collections. Very impressed. All of you show a great visual maturity. And so I enjoy checking in at various times to see what photographs each of you are making. So thank you for sharing that.
No, and hopefully we'll be able to, work together, because I'm sure John has a lot of very, very good photographers as well.
And John, will you let us know how people can see the recording?
Absolutely. I guess it's recorded on my computer, and I also backed it up on the other computer in a QuickTime screen capture. So I'll cut out that portion where we had a glitch.
Okay, and then just maybe send the link, or you can send it to me and I can send it out to the membership if you'd like.
Okay, I'll put it on my Dropbox.
Okay, great.
I'd like to be able to see the link in maybe the comments or photo section that usually follows a meetup after the group. That would be a lot easier for me to actually be able to access if somebody could do that.
Here's newest member, Deanna.
But wait, let's see if we can respond to that. Meetup is gonna do away with that.
I've got a daughter who's 36 and I've got a daughter who's 7. And so she's been watching and learning.
Yes, the next generation.
Yeah, she's got her own little camera too.
Awesome.
Yeah, Renee, well,
Yes.
this is not, are we gonna post an album on this?
No, I just said that. No, we're
Renee,
going.
we're not posting an album of John's work, but you can send John your questions directly, or he can send you a copy of the recording, or maybe even a copy of the presentation. Just speak with John and I'm sure he can accommodate you.
Okay, I'm not overly familiar with how to do that, so that's why I thought that's the only way that I knew how to.
Yeah,
find things in
Meetup is
that.
gonna discontinue that aspect very shortly, being able to leave comments after an event, but this is not our event per se, it's John's in person.
Part of the other group. Yeah.
But
Thank you.
he'll get you what you need, I'm sure.
Thank you.
How many members are there in your group now? I'm curious. Like 1,000 or something?
In which group? In which group?
Is it?
Jack, aren't there 5,000 people that are registered, but they don't regularly attend?
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, only about 10% of ours come to the meeting. We're about 70 members. No, I guess.
So we did okay, we had 100 people that signed up and 50% showed up.
That's fine.
So that's good.
Well, thank you for all you do to preserve the art of photography. And
Well, we're gonna count on you to work on that area along with our West Coast people. I don't know what's happening over there, it's very mysterious.
oh, you mean like Tampa?
Yeah, they're trying, let's put it like that.
Yeah. Well, we've been around for almost 2 years and we'll continue to grow and we'll keep in touch.
Good.
Use it as
All right then, any final words, John?
well. It's been a pleasure and thank you for. Let me see it. Where is your camera? Okay, well, just bring it in. She's going to bring in her little camera. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and I will share this with the members of my group that weren't present here. Some of them are here, and I think I might even put this up. I'll figure out a way to put it on the.
Now, here's a real high-end camera, here it is.
Yeah.
There you go.
My color scheme.
I was hoping that was going to be pink. Judy, we need one of those.
Too.
It's $20 on Facebook Marketplace.
Nice.
It even does video. It even does video.
And I believe it's shock resistant.
Oh.
It's usually has a little bit of a give to it.
Well, there you go.
No.
Hey,
Very rugged and able to be going outside with it.
okay,
Nice.
guys, look, we're gonna sign off, we're gonna say goodnight, and we hope you join us on the weekend. I think it's a Saturday this week.
Yes,
Yeah.
Saturday.
If
Y'all
you can
take
make it,
care. Thank
if
you.
you can make it, that's great.
Thank you
And,
for allowing the various groups to come together.
Well,
Yeah, let's do it again soon.
That would be great.
Okay.
let's stay in touch.
Thank
We'll
you
stay in
very
touch.
much.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye,
Well, take care.
everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Night,
John,
night.
for the great
Bye.
presentation. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you,
That's-
John. Good night
that's-
now.